some encouraging words coming from the Old Testament in 1 Samuel, the first chapter, verses 9 through verse 17. Would you stand with me? And this is coming from the New Century Version, and it reads as follows. Once, after they had eaten their meal in Shiloh, Hannah got up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on a chair near the entrance to the Lord's house. Hannah was so sad that she cried and prayed to the Lord. She made a promise, saying, Lord all-powerful, see how sad I am. Remember me and don't forget me. If you will give me a son, I will give him back to you all his life, and no one will ever cut his hair with a razor. While Hannah kept praying, Eli watched her mouth. She was praying in her heart, so her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, stop getting drunk. Throw away your wine. Hannah answered, no, sir. I have not drunk any wine or beer. I am a deeply troubled woman. And I was telling the Lord all about my troubles. Don't think I'm an evil woman. I've been praying because I have many troubles and am very sad. Eli answered, go, I wish you well. May the God of Israel give you what you asked of him. Amen. Amen. You may be seated in the house of the Lord. I want to talk to you for just a little while this morning about a mother's prayer. A mother's prayer. This is one of those familiar passages of Scripture that we've heard read from time to time, specifically when it comes to a Mother's Day celebration. Hannah is a familiar person. According to the text, it is at Shiloh that this family yearly has gone up to celebrate the sacrifice and to acknowledge the presence of God in their lives. Elkanah, who just happens to be the priest at this particular time, along with his two wives. I know that's foreign to us today, and I know that some of you men would like to think that you could handle two, but the truth of the matter is sometimes you are hard-pressed to handle one. According to Hebrew culture, there was a day when individuals were allowed to have two wives. Elkanah had Hannah and Peninnah. Now the problem is that on this particular occasion, like some other occasions, Hannah has been ridiculed by the sister who has been productive and has been capable of producing children. You know historically that it was an extremely difficult time when a female had not produced children. It was even more difficult when the sister had not produced a child, but specifically a male child. So you can imagine just for a moment the torture that Hannah had gone through, that she had experienced, and how troubling this must have been for her. She wanted more than anything in life to have children and produce for her husband a male child. It is the belief of the Hebrews that if in fact you produce a male child, the husband, when he passes or dies, is allowed to sleep out eternity in heaven. If in fact there is no male child, it causes problems for this person. History has it that if in fact the man has a male child, when he sleeps, when he dies, he goes into heaven and is allowed to be before the Father. If he does not, the entrance is closed. If in fact there is no male child produced, then it's obvious that it is blamed on the sister. You can imagine year after year going up to Shiloh and Hannah has been unproductive. You can imagine the trail that leads towards Shiloh that Penina has been agitating and aggravating Hannah over and over again. Her children, we don't know how many, we know she had girls and boys as children. They are dancing around, prancing, celebrating on the trip, but Hannah is in agony. She is agonizing because she feels like a failure. Every female that has not produced a child, that wanted to produce a child, is troubled because for one reason or another, they've not had the ability nor the opportunity to produce a child. While reading this passage of Scripture, I couldn't help but notice that the troubling piece for Hannah is that her unproductiveness is not her fault.
Amen. Amen.
The most troubling piece for me is that the text is undoubtedly certain when it says that God had closed her womb.
Amen.
It's most troubling because the question for me, of course, is to ask, why would God close up the womb of Hannah, knowing that this would be an experience that would be most difficult, knowing that in this position she would be troubled and perplexed on every side, because every time her husband saw her or she saw her husband, she was going to feel like a failure. So I talked with God this week to ask God, why in the world, of all the things you could do to her, why would you close her womb? And God hollered back and suggested to me that there are difficult stages in our life. There are times when we have something in our life that is so troubling that we don't have an answer for it. But God says, I've got an opportunity to show up in the midst of your problem. And so sometimes when it is extremely difficult and we don't have an answer for it, God said, if you hold on long enough, I'll tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so while God is answering why he closes the womb of Hannah, Hannah talks with God personally. Now you got to give it to the sister with everything that she's experiencing, with all of the ridicule, with everything that seems to be going wrong around her. She still takes time to talk with God. So often, when we have gone through something for a prolonged period of time, it's almost as if we have a tendency just to give up. If we don't verbally say that we've given up, we will begin to act as though we've given up, as though we've already been defeated. And so we'll take on the mentality that we are just going to step aside because after all, it looks useless. But Hannah stops for a moment to make a vow with God. I suggest to you this morning that when you are experiencing difficult times in your personal life, you might want to pause momentarily so that you can make a vow to God, trusting that God's going to keep his side of the bargain. without a child, without any semblance of hope, with a stage of hopelessness staring her in the face, she decides to talk with God. Now the audience in Shiloh has suggested that she's gone before the priest. She is praying, but the priest is unaware of the conversation or the soliloquy that she is having with God and thinks that she must be inebriated. She must be drunk. Something's wrong with her. She's moving her lips, but no words are coming out. She must be schizophrenic. She's talking to herself because there's no one else in sight. And sometimes people will have a tendency to look at you differently because you are addressing God in a way that's different from the way they address God. And so all of a sudden, while you're busy making a vow and talking with God, people are looking at you like you lost your ever loving mind. She makes a vow with God. God, you give me a son. You hear me? She's specific. When you pray and talk with God, be specific as to what it is you want from God. Stop dealing with generalities in your request of God. Pinpoint it and tell him exactly what it is you need. If you need $100,000, tell God it's $100,000. Don't just say, God, I need some money. I need a little change. No, I need specifically this amount. If you've got a hard-headed mate and you know that you can't corral him or her and get them to do what it is they're supposed to do, tell God what it is. And let God handle it. He's big enough to do it. If that child is wayward and destructive and won't seem to follow what it is God has asked them to do, tell God and let God handle it. Stop trying to do it on your own. You made enough mess out of it. Let him do it. So while she's busy giving a vow to God, asking God to bless me specifically with a male child, I need a male child. And if you give me a male child, I'll make sure that I'll bring him back to you and he can serve you for as long as he lives. Now that was the agreement from Hannah. And while she's busy talking with God, God is already working it out. And I suggest to you this morning that while you are busy praying to God and while you've gone before him, God has already gone before you. Work that thing out. And so she says, I'll tell you, I'll give it back to you and I'll let him serve you. How many of you in here this morning have prayed for your children? You do understand that if you've not prayed for your children, the devil is waiting in the wings to grip them up and to pull them away from you. That's all he wants. The one thing that you got to give to Hannah is that Hannah had this crazy practice. She loved talking to the Lord. To this day, Lauren is 16 years old. For 16 years, Lauren knows that if you come into the bedroom early in the morning, her daddy's going to be at the bedside, kneel right there at the mattress, praying and talking to God. I say that only to suggest to you, have you started some sort of commonality or tradition in your life that your child knows on a regular basis they can intervene and know that you are there praying to the Lord? Hannah is asking for a child. She's talking to God. She's prayed, she's given a vow, and now she says, now if you give him to me, I'm going to give him back to you. So when she prays, she's asking God, give me my child. When you give me my child, I'm going to be devoted to making sure that I prepare him so that he comes right back to you. She has taught her son how to worship God. It's one thing to ask for a child, to raise a child, but are you raising that child to be
in the sight of God what God wants them to be. Come on, talk to me this morning. We're still talking about a mother's prayer. Her prayer is that God will bless her with a child, but also so that that child can be utilized by God to do what God wants her to do. Not only does she teaches the child how to worship, or she teaches the child how to be obedient to God. Now, there's some things that we can teach our children verbally, but there's other things we have to teach them in doing. Your child is not prepared to do it if they haven't seen you do it. But if you think it's valuable for your child to do it, show them. She showed her child how it was he was to worship God, how he was to serve God by doing it and saying it. Hannah, this praying mother, is closer to God. And the last point I want to share with you is that not only had she taught him to do it, but she had learned how to worship God for herself. When God had given her her baby, and she promised she was going to give it back, she kept her word. She gave her baby back because every year as he got older, she once a year would show up at Shiloh to worship their God. Now, the reason why some of our children are not showing up at Shiloh is because many of them are mimicking the inconsistencies that we have in our own personal lives. And so if we are not consistent in showing up at worship and sacrificing and worshiping and trusting God and giving a vow to God, then why in the world should they commit themselves to the Lord that we haven't even committed to? A mother's prayer is that when she has raised her child, that child will give their lives over to God. This is Mother's Day. This is the day that your children want to celebrate your existence and your influence in their lives. And thank God for each and every one of you mothers. Thank you for being holy. Thank you for being sacrificial. Thank you for giving to us when we didn't deserve it. Thank you. And not all of you have produced a child. But thank God for a blended family. Because there are mothers here this morning who have been mothers to others that they themselves have not produced. Amen. Amen. The mother's prayer this morning is that she's grateful to God who gave her what she asked for.